Part 9 of the Prince Alfred's Pass covers the section from the 31st kilometre to the 38th kilometre and includes the sculpture at the intersection with the R339 and ends at the lower Buffelsneck Forestry village. This is one of the easier sections of the Prince Alfred's Pass, where a slightly higher speed can be maintained as the road is wider and has fewer bends, corners and curves than those previously covered. The road heads west along a high ridge for 2 kilometres, following the northern side of yet another river gorge. Going back to the mid-1800s, the Cape Post Office did not undertake the setting up of new country offices very lightly, for quite apart from the added expenditure incurred in their equipment, staffing and the establishment of new mail routes, colonial office rules made such an exercise subject to prolonged and detailed procedures. At a time when the total number of post offices in the colony barely exceeded 350, postal administrators would hardly have welcomed the addition of another 700 establishments. This would account for the proliferation during this time of field cornet posts, which previously had been thought to be purely administrative in nature, but which now can be assumed to have served as an extension of the colonial postal infrastructure. The position of postmaster on a convict station usually fell to the master of stores, who was issued with an obliterating stamp to process postal matter. At least 2 such instruments have been documented to date, namely the Wagon Maker's Valley, which used the octagon numeral 15, and Howisson's Poort, which used a bar triangle obliterator. These could easily be transferred from location to location without necessitating a change of name or the expense of providing their postmasters with an engraved office date stamp. A similar policy was also employed subsequently by the Cape GPO for temporary post offices. The road climbs up steadily to a ridge where there's a multiple point intersection. This area has recently been harvested for pines, so the views are currently wide and open. At the 34 kilometre mark, the road curves away to the left and follows the contours of a long ridge. From this vantage point, there are wonderful views over open hillsides and forest-clad slopes as the road winds its way down towards the intersection at the R310 to Plettenberg Bay. The gradients along this section are gentle, but there's often water on this part of the pass, so be prepared for some deeper pools on the inside radius of some of the bends. At the 35.5 kilometre point, the intersection with the R310 is reached. Here you'll see an odd metal tree-like structure with what looks like old-fashioned Loudales attached to the ends. This is a relatively new sculpture. The work of art is by internationally renowned South African sculptor Strydom van der Merwe and is called Calling the Herd. It consists of interactive trumpets that symbolically call the elephant herd along a mountain ridge overlooking the valleys in the Keurboom's corridor, encouraging them to return and call as they once did. In 2013, the art piece was erected to celebrate the Keurboom's corridor connecting the Garden of Eden section of the Garden Route National Park to the Tsitsikamma National Park section. Visitors can blow these trumpets, recalling the sounds of elephants on the ancient migration route across the mountains. There are 2 options at the intersection. You can take the left-hand option onto the R310 and descend via the Paardekoop Pass to Plettenberg Bay, or you can keep right and remain on the Prince Alfred's Pass. The road now heads south, then swings into the east-southeast as it starts climbing along the northern face of the next ridge. From this geographical point, the average annual rainfall increases substantially. On gravel roads like these, where the gradients are fairly flat, it's common to find water pooling on the road, which causes corrugations and potholes. Most of the forests here consist of commercial plantations. At the 37.2 kilometre point, there's a very sharp right-hand bend of 160 degrees. The road changes direction into the west and climbs gently towards a small cluster of timber buildings in the distance, which is the lower Buffelsneck Forestry village. The road now climbs into the south via a number of gentle S-bends at a gradient of around 1 in 25. There's usually logging activity happening here on weekdays, so be aware of the possibility of heavy-duty logging vehicles on the road. Plus, there's also a school quite close to the road, so be aware of children as well as domestic animals. The video ends just before the village. Be sure to watch part 10 of the Prince Alfred's Pass.